Hello everyone, a very good morning to you. Welcome once again to the Misano World Circuit. Marco Simoncelli for Ferrari Challenge Round 2 of our 2023 season. And we are here for qualifying for our Coppa Shell drivers. The sheer volume of Coppa Shell drivers means we split them into the two subcategories that we have within Coppa Shell. One being the Shell drivers, which we will see first on circuit for their 20-minute qualifying session. And you can identify the fact that a car is a Shell driver's car by virtue of the fact it has a yellow sun strip across the top of the windscreen. Shell AM drivers, well, they have a black strip across the top of the windscreen. This is where we are, and we invite you to follow us on @Ferrari Races. Misano then for our second event of our 2023 season. Pretty early in the morning here on the Adriatic coast for qualifying, as indeed was the case yesterday, and the track then will be somewhat green relative to what it will be when it comes to race time a little bit later on. The drivers will be fully aware of that. The weather conditions, 16 degrees, the current temperature 19 degrees, the track temperature with virtually no wind to speak of, affecting us here at the 4.2 kilometer circuit. So we have some 12 Shell drivers that will be taking to the track to try and set the very best time that they can, which will give them their grid position for the race to come a little bit later on. And Motohiko Isosaki is one of those drivers that is preparing himself right now to go out and put in the very best lap time that he can. Motohiko Isosaki, of course, who has raced in our previous Ferrari Challenge Asia Pacific series, which now becomes the Ferrari Challenge Japan series, selected to race in Europe this year and is very welcome. Henrik Kamstrup then, he had a great podium yesterday, perhaps a little bit unexpected because it was something of a turbulent race, and I think that's quite a polite way to describe it. And yeah, a number of drivers were impacted and affected by that, and subsequently they positions were chopping and changing during the course of the race. There is Stefano Marazzi. Alongside me is Nico Spalek. Good morning.
Good morning, Dave. Good morning, everybody. Welcome here from Misano. We're about 2 minutes away from the start of this first qualifying session. It's only 20 minutes long because, as you said, we split Shell and Shell AM in two separate sessions. But before the cars roar away out of pit lane, there is Ludovica in the pit lane.
Good morning, Nico. Good morning, Dave, and good morning to everybody. Welcome back in Misano. Everything is ready for the first qualifying session of the day. In this moment, all the cars are ready for start this day. Yesterday was a competitive and fun and good day. All the riders was very competitive on the circuit. And the question for this morning is who will be the pole for today.
Absolutely, it is the question to be posed and poised, as it were. Who will be the pole sitter? So Shell AM drivers, a black sunstrip across the top of the windscreen. And Boris Gideon, Motohiko Isosaki, who we've already seen. Stefano Marazzi, we've seen also. Martinus Richter, who was one of those who had a turbulent time in the race yesterday. Kirk Beervold, who maxed out his points haul in the race yesterday. Tommy Lindroth. Mutlu, Tarzev, Pino Frascaro, Giuseppe Romelli, to name but a few of them. We're looking at a Trofeo Pirelli car right now, and that the car of Alessio Dono, who crossed the line P1 in his race yesterday and actually was then relegated to P2 following a time penalty. And I have to say they were kept very busy in the administration section of race control yesterday in terms of delivering penalties, not only through the race but after the race as well, and most of those brought about by track limits, which are always something of a problem here at the Misano circuit, Nico, which of course is narrow in places and almost lends itself to trying to push the track limits to the extent of what is allowed. The drivers are almost encouraged to do that by the shape of the tarmac.
Yeah, kind of. You can tell it's also very much a motorcycle circuit, and therefore it's really flowing in parts. And that means if you're on four wheels, you can do with a little bit more space, and therefore the drivers will just try and get as much momentum out of every turn, which they should. However, sometimes you run a little bit too wide, and if you do that 2 or 3 times too often, then penalties will come, and that really was more of a topic in the Trofeo Pirelli race. probably by virtue of the fact that in Coppa Shell we did have 2 safety cars, which obviously reduced the number of laps that the drivers did under race speed. Now, as customary in the Ferrari Challenge on the Sunday, the drivers come out fairly early in the qualifying session as we take a look at the Fons Skeltemar shark teeth themed universe, almost. His crash helmet on top of his car, and obviously the P2 trophy that he took yesterday. Now we are first up with Coppa Shell AM, and that means von Skeltemar's car still stationary in the pit lane as we watch our AM drivers take to the track. It's Giuseppe Romelli, one of those who go on board as he concludes the first short straight following the start-finish straight, and heads towards that U-turn, which then brings him back onto the kind of the second of the 3 straights here on that circuit.
Yes, you can see the screen in the middle of the dashboard there. The reason for that, and you can see it flickering, and that's as a result of us running an onboard camera on the car as well. Now, these 488 Challenge Evos have always had a screen which projects the rearward view onto a screen rather than through a rear view mirror. The reason for that is there's a big safety bulkhead which prevents the use of a rear view mirror. Well, it doesn't prevent the use of it, it's just you wouldn't see anything because there's a bulkhead in the way. And all the drivers have said in the history of this wonderful, hugely successful car that actually the vision and image that they have on that screen is vastly superior to that they would have had with any rear view mirror. So that's why you can see that quite distracting flickering screen right in the middle of the dashboard of the Giuseppe Romelli car, who's about to complete a lap here. His kind of first warm-up lap, if you will, and we see the car crossing the timing line right now here at the Misano circuit already. Down to 17.5 minutes. We'll run the clock on Giuseppe Romelli now to find out what the Rosso Corsa Pelin Racing driver can do. This first sequence of turns through turns 1, 2, and 3, very much a funnel through the circuit, and of course right at the start of the race when you've got some 20-plus cars all trying to vie for the same piece of tarmac road. It can become something of a very busy place with consequences that may form part of that. Let's split the screen so you can see Giuseppe Romelli hard at work inside the cockpit of the 488 Challenge Evo, and also what those inputs that you can see on the steering control and the gear shift, of course, paddle shift gearbox, how that is relating to what the car is doing and how the car is dancing around the tarmac here. And it's always great to have those this split shot, if you will, because you can see how the inputs are really impacting and affecting how the car is behaving on the track. And Giuseppe Romelli, who missed out on racing in Valencia but is back here and will give us a first indicative time. It's not going to be necessarily a meaningful time because it will probably take more than a couple of laps to bring the tyres up to a good temperature, and as Nico alluded to earlier on, generally what they tend to do is go out on an older set of tyres before coming in and pausing during qualifying, putting a new set on and scrubbing those in and going for their fastest lap time. Of course, the opportunity for them to do that is somewhat narrowed because with the Coppa Shell drivers split into 2, they have 20 minutes of qualifying rather than an overall 30 minutes, which would have been the case had the 2 subcategories qualified together, Nico.
Yeah, absolutely perfect analysis, and that means everybody but one car, and that is that of Boris Gideon, is already out on the track, and we expect that first stint to be rather quick and sharp and brief, and then the drivers to come in with minimum 10 minutes remaining, probably more, as Kirk Burwald, who leads the Coppa Shell AM and was one of those who was part of that very entertaining back and forth race in Coppa Shell AM yesterday. He is setting good first sectors. Now we're still far away from where we were yesterday at the very end of qualifying, but he is improving, and he's improving by quite a bit of a margin. You can see 1.5 seconds quicker than the previous best time. So we also see Giuseppe Romelli on an improvement, almost identical lap times through sector 2. Kirk Burwald, you can already see in spaces where the drivers really go very, very far onto the runoff area as much as they dare, just onto the curbs as Kirk Berwald takes the last turn. Nope, he already dials out of that, and I think that's an indication of how brief that qualifying session is, because he doesn't even complete that lap, which would have inevitably been given him provisional pole. But he thinks that coming in earlier, changing to the new set of tires, which will then allow him a much improved grip and handling for the rest of the session, is more valuable. Giuseppe Romelli, slightly different approach. He continues and finishes that lap. However, his lap was judged to have been track limit laden, or whatever. Anyway, it didn't count because he had a track limit transgression. Isozaki, in the meantime, he with a clean lap of 1:39.710. That's still a little bit away from where we were yesterday with the best times, which came from Boris Gideon, a 1:36.989. So we're talking about roughly a second of difference. But having a banker is never a bad thing.
Absolutely not. You never know what's going to happen during the qualifying session. Sessions do get suspended. And Motohiko Isozaki is on another hot one right now. Giuseppe Romelli doing the same. Of course, all the hard work that Giuseppe Romelli did previously counted as naught, because the moment you have a track limits infringement during qualifying, that lap time is deleted. Now, yes, time is a factor, but generally speaking, there's plenty of time on the clock, relatively, for him to go again. Every lap that you do, you are taking longevity out of the tyre. Now, whether Giuseppe is on a new set or whether Giuseppe is still on an old set, I would question, because we only have 13 minutes of the session remaining. So some of those drivers may have chosen to go out on a set that they're going to use in the race. And subsequently, I would think with Giuseppe now coming into the pit lane, perhaps that doesn't add fuel to that theory. Of course, strategically, the teams play a very, very important part, because whilst there are only 10 of the drivers across this 20-minute session that will be qualifying, of course, sending the drivers out in clear air is absolutely critical as Motohiko Isozaki goes for an improvement, and it wasn't an improvement, actually. A 1:38.725 is an improvement. Well done to Motohiko Isozaki. Kirk Berwald still P2 at the moment, and there we can see the 1:07 car of Stefano Marazzi making its way out onto the track. So the order is Motohiko Isozaki, Kirk Berwald, and Giuseppe Romelli currently. We've got 12 minutes remaining, and this is the 1:11 car of Martinus Richter, who returned to the Ferrari Challenge yesterday. The German driver who didn't make Valencia, but he's certainly back here. He was one of those that suffered from some of the turbulence that we experienced during the race yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a up and down and back and forth, but certainly in terms of sheer pace, Martinus Richter was right up there. And talking about right up there, he's not right at the very top, but he's only beaten currently by this man, Motohiko Isozaki, first on our timing screen, first on your screen, and first through 2 sectors. However, he is coming up on traffic, and that's exactly what you were talking about. It's only 10 cars, but you know, if you've got a significant speed difference, then traffic is an issue, and it's going to be interesting how Isozaki plays this. If he comes into the pits now, that means he is on an old set of tires. If he stays out, then potentially he's already opted to go out on a new set, and he is staying out. So I think with 10 minutes and change remaining by the time he comes around, I'm not sure if he's going to come in and use that proven or default strategy of having his qualifying in 2 stints.
See there, he lost 2 seconds in that qualifying lap, and it's through no fault. And I want to make that clear that, you know, if you are another driver, perhaps on your warm-up or installation lap, as indeed a couple of drivers there were, Pino Frascaro, I think, being one of them, you can do your level best to get out of the way of a driver that is on a hot lap, and you do that, but it still compromises the lap that is being conducted by the driver that is on a hot lap through absolutely no fault of the drivers that are out there on an install, because they just can't physically get out of the way enough without indicating left and putting the car on the grass. You know, it's that simple. So that is one of the factors that I believe is where the team's strategic advice is very, very important to the drivers because, of course, they've got access to the GPS data on the map. They can see, on the track map, I mean, they can see exactly where every car is, and therefore they can try and pitch the car out into a relatively clear tarmac position. Now, of course, that can change in a heartbeat. Of course it can, and you can only go based on the information that you have in front of you. There's Lucky Kira, UK driver, and Lucky Kira then another one, and we've still not quite got to the bottom of what happened to Lucky yesterday in the race, and we will find out. But we're looking at a number of the other drivers, including the fine silverware atop of the Axel Sartingen car. He, of course, one of the Shell drivers, had a very successful day yesterday. In fact, maxing his haul to the best of his ability. Did a very, very good job indeed. And also Martinus Richter, who has just been bested for the top spot in this qualifying session by Henrik Kamstrup. He's going again and improving, but see how tiny the margins become towards the end of the session. There are 4 1,000s between himself and Henrik Kamstrup at the moment.
Absolutely, and that's exactly where, you know, that little bit of traffic, and there is Mutan Tasev, and that is exactly, you know, he's trying to get out of the way, but Martinus Richter has to take a different line. He can't quite use the width of the track, and if we're talking 4 1,000s or a tenth, that is where it does make a difference. So you absolutely analyzed and made that point very correctly, and you know, all of a sudden it's 6/10 gone with the wind, and okay, we've got 8 minutes remaining. Martinus Richter still in a reasonable position in P2, but he had an opportunity to improve on his current time, taken away in that instance. So it's going to be interesting. Motohiko Izuzaki also on a good lap. However, his lap in his first sector was compromised by track limits. So whatever he does on this lap won't count. And that's again where the team comes in, because the moment the team sees that T for track limits on the timing screen, they will advise the driver, actually, there's no real reason to push too much on that lap because it's not going to count. Better to set yourself up for the next one. And so wherever the time stops.
Not sure that message got through to Motohiko.
Well, but you know, on the other hand, if you're the driver, you don't really want to lose your rhythm. So there is always a little bit of a trade-off. Kirk Verwald, in the meantime, no track limit warning for him, and that means his P1 counts, and that pushes him to the very top of the timing stream. Henrik Kamstrup relegated to P2. We haven't seen Boris Gideon, that's one thing I have to say. He's P10 on our timing screen and hasn't shown up on the track. He was pole setter yesterday. He was involved in one of the incidents yesterday, so I really hope that his car is okay for him to start.
Well, maybe. Now, a guy that knows all about qualifying and how to get best out of qualifying is a guy called Stefano Guy. Can I use Guy any more times here in the introduction to him? But a fine racer, former Ferrari Challenge champion, and champion in his own right in many categories. And Ludovica has caught up with him on the pit wall. Stefano Guy.
Welcome back, guys. I'm here with Stefano Guy, Kamstrup coach. Stefano, your drivers today get a good qualification and start the day in a better way.
Yes, we fixed some things compared to the quali of yesterday. I'm watching live my driver now. We are P2 at the moment, only 1/10 gap from the pole. He's improving, and I hope with the penalty of the other car, we can stay in P1. And the pace of the race one yesterday was very, very fast, and so I am quite confident to do a very good result for race 2 today.
Thank you so much. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Confidence is a word that I'm not absolutely convinced when it comes to the race this afternoon. I am confident in the track limits not proving to be an issue once again today, given how many track limits lap time deletions we've had in qualifying this morning. Stefano Marazzi we're watching right now, the Rosso Corsa driver, who is currently P5 on the timing chart. We've got 5.5 minutes of this session remaining. It is being led by Kirk Bervold, then it's Henrik Kamstrup, Martinus Richter, Motohiko Izuzaki, who of course was playing out the top spot for some time. Stefano Marazzi is behind Motohiko Izuzaki, then it's Mutlu Tazev, Tommy Lindroth, Pino Frascaro, and as Nico said, Boris Gideon, who was involved in one of the incidents yesterday, which was really, really unfortunate, has not made his way out of the pit lane yet. And I would think with just under 5 minutes remaining, if he's going to do that, it's now or never.
Indeed. as we said before, there were a few incidents yesterday in the race, and that means we'll have a few grid penalties which will apply. And one of those drivers who will accrue a grid penalty is Boris Gideon, which will drop him way down the order. So maybe there is a rationale of, actually there is not much point in going out. I'm not sure, we don't quite know that yet, but that may be a factor in that. Another driver in the same category is Motohiko Isozaki, by the way.
Oh, okay. Right, well, here is Henrik Kamstrup, who was on the podium yesterday and is currently second fastest. Stefano Marazzi is on a really, really hot lap at the moment, incidentally. You can see the two Sector 1 and Sector 2 boxes have been lit up purple, which means he's on a hot one. And he's really, really going for it. We pick up the Stefano Marazzi car. Well done to our team in OB control. Mission control, I'm almost tempted to say. Such is the stress level and anxiety in that very building. Because, of course, they have so many images to watch and keep across. And doing a good job here, as we can see. Perhaps now a new provisional pole. And well done, guys. You did it. You delivered it. A 1:37.969. The margins between the top drivers really, really reducing now because Stefano Marazzi, who doesn't have a track limits warning across that time, which means the time sticks, is just 5/100ths quicker than Kirk Beervold. So Axel Sartingen is going through his warm-up routine. He's one of the Shell drivers, and he'll be out qualifying shortly. And he is a thorough entertainer, both on the track and off the track, to be honest with you. And his legend maintains its status, I would suggest, watching him there going through his exercises. Christian Herdvieper in the 183 car, you can see, is already in the car, ready to go out in this session. Now, he is a Shell driver. You could identify that from the yellow sunstrip across the top of the windscreen. But it is Stefano Marazzi, who is P1 at the moment. Now, Kirk Beervold is trying to respond. And Kirk Beervold wants pole position within class. Because not only does it give you the advantageous starting point, i.e. of being P1 on the grid, it does give you another point as well. And Kirk Beervold is leading the points at the moment, and therefore any point he can bank is good news for him.
No, absolutely, and he is on his way to the timing line, and that will mean P1 for him. 2.5 tenths almost to the good of Stefano Marazzi. So we've got a new pole setter, Henrik Kamstrup, also currently P3, Giuseppe Romelli currently P6, trying to go for it and improve on his current position. A 1:37.734 is the pole time. He lets the stop at 1:38.632. That is not an improvement, it's not far off, but for the time being it stays where he is. Motohiko Isozaki going quick, but we know he's not going to challenge for pole position come the end of come the beginning of the race, actually. He's still eligible for the point, because even if you get a penalty on the grid, if you qualify in P1, you get that point, because that penalty is only retroactively applied. So Motohiko Isozaki is still challenging for that point, and 4/10 is probably a little bit too much through that stadium section, which is very technical, and you can gain a lot of time, you can lose a lot of time here, but Kirk Beervold certainly didn't look like he was slow through there, so that those 4/10s probably a little bit too much to overcome. We're just above 1 minute of time remaining. That means for Isozaki this lap and the next one are still up for grabs in terms of improvement. Stefano Marazzi has come into the pit, so he's satisfied with his 1:37.969, whichever starting position that will yield for him.
Indeed, we will ascertain that, of course, come the race. But Motohiko Isozaki, quite rightly, is pushing and pushing. And here we can see Stefano Marazzi then, who has gone for that 1:37.969. It's Kirk Beervold that has given us a 1:37.734. And there you can see him out of the car. And congratulations being afforded to Stefano Marazzi, the Rosso Corsa driver, who Stefano Guy has influence in as well. So it is Kirk Beervold, Stefano Marazzi, Henrik Kamstrup, Martinus Richter. That's the way it looks at the moment, with but 5 seconds remaining on the board. And here is Motohiko Isozaki. And he is, I mean, he's been relentlessly going for it. And you can see Sector 1 is a purple sector for Motohiko Isozaki. And he is pushing and continuing to push. Now with Stefano Marazzi, Ludo has caught up with him already in the pit lane. Stefano Marazzi.
Stefano, this morning you are very, very fast. Can you tell more us about your qualification and what the strategy you decide with the team for this morning?
Yes, thank you very much. The strategy is that this morning I have made two laps with all the tires, just to try some two lap and try the race. And after we have
a good feeling today. Okay.
with the new tires, so I drive safety from more fast than tomorrow. So I'm very happy for my qualification.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well done to Ludovica, then catching up with Stefano Marazzi, who is just 2/10 behind Kirk Beervold. I don't think there's anyone that is going to better Kirk Beervold's time. Henrik Kamstrup does just better Stefano Marazzi's and crosses the timing line just under 2/10 behind Kirk Beervold. So a very good performance from Henrik Kamstrup, and I can't help but feel that Henrik has been buoyed perhaps by the success and podium that he took yesterday, which he would admit by his own admission that it was arguably unexpected, but the course of penalties that were being applied and cars going everywhere during the course of the race yesterday, anything could happen, and probably it did, Nico.
Yeah, definitely. And Henrik Kamstrup had a good lap towards the end of yesterday's qualifying, and he kept us on the edge of our seats, and then eventually in the final sector he didn't improve. Different story today. So we didn't talk him up during the lap, so we can talk him up after the lap, and he has completed that and has put it on to P2, row 1 in class, and there are the results for you.
Kirk Beervold then the best of them with a 1:37.734. Within 2/10 was Henrik Kamstrup. Stefano Marazzi not far behind either. Then Motohiko Isazaki, Martinus Richter, Giuseppe Romelli, Tommy Lindroth, Mudlo Tarzev, Pino Frescaro, and Boris Gideon. Completing the 10 drivers in Coppa Shell AM. Bear in mind there are some grid penalties that will be awarded that will shape the grid when it comes to the race. Meantime, Manuela Gosner is getting herself ready to go out there on track. You can see the entire Gosner family there in the helmet storage area, and there is Thomas Gosner, father of Manuela and father of Corinna and father of David as well. They are quite a family affair when it comes to the Ferrari Challenge Racing. Kirk Beervold then has done a brilliant job and a 1:37.734. I had a long conversation with Kirk yesterday. First met Kirk when in the North American Series, and he was saying, you know, part of the attraction and part of the challenge for me, Dave, is the fact that the circuits and the competition in the European Series is so different to that in North America, and he meant primarily in terms of the tracks which in North America, he said, you know, you have wide open spaces and runoff areas. He said, European circuits are much different. And he said, I'm really enjoying it. And you can see how much he's enjoying it by the success that he's having as well. So well done to Kirk Beervold. He put it on pole position, 1:37.734. That's an impressive time. And he will be in a very good position when it comes to the Coppa Shell AM race this afternoon. Of course, we are just moments away from the Coppa Shell drivers taken to the grid for their qualifying, Nico.
Yeah, indeed. It's just a few moments until we will go back with our Coppa Shell drivers, which are extremely competitive this season. We've already seen it across both qualifying and the races, where 1 or 2 tenths can really make a difference between row 1 and row 4. But before we go to that, here are some images of the qualifying session we've just seen to music for you to enjoy. And those were some of the impressions from Coppa Shell AM qualifying. And it was interesting, and it's going to be interesting what happens in Coppa Shell. Before we go there, we will go to someone also very interesting, and that is Ludovica down in the pit lane.
Yes, guys, welcome back on the pit. I want to show you all the cars that are ready for this qualifying session of Coppa Shell AM. In the front we have the car of Axel Sartingen that who made yesterday a good race. It's a beautiful images of all the pit. It's a good way to dive up into the paddock life.
Thank you so much. As always, von Skeltermar is ready to bite for qualifying with the shark's teeth adorning the car. You can also see in the backdrop there John Dillon. And John Dillon had a torrid time of it in the race yesterday through no fault of his own, and he'll be hoping for a better result today. And keep the faith, John, because he's a very, very good driver. We'll see what John Dillon can do in qualifying. There's Eric Chung. Eric Chung is one of the most well-travelled and experienced Ferrari Challenge drivers on the grid, having raced in not only the European Series, but also in Asia Pacific in the past. And I think he may have had 1 or 2 entries in North America as well. I mean, Eric Chung, who's seemingly ever present in the Ferrari Challenge and deriving just as much enjoyment in his participation now as he did when he started racing, and he's always a welcome addition. It's good to see Eric on the track. There you can see Trofeo Pirelli car being prepped and ready for qualifying. Their session, of course, comes up after the Coppa Shell qualifying, but lovely to get some of those images of the teams hard at work in the garages, and perhaps sometimes that we don't give enough credit to the fact that behind every driver like Thomas Gostner, we can see there's a team that's always hard at work. And many drivers say that you know, despite there's only one driver in the car, you win and you lose as a team, and all the emotions that are experienced by a racing driver are also shared by those engineers and mechanics and logistics people that work within the teams as well, and we should never lose sight of that fact. It is very much an integral part of anyone's success. There you can see the 117 car of the Race Art Kroijmans driver. That's Roger Grols, who took a year off from Ferrari Challenge racing last year, but has come back this year, and we're delighted to see Roger, the Netherlands-based driver. And he will be out on track shortly for his qualifying session. He's always someone to keep an eye on. Very, very quick driver. He, during his year's absence away from the Ferrari Challenge, he continued to race, but in very, very different categories. You know, talking about endurance rally raid type stuff that he was doing. There's Willem van der Vorm. Now, if there were unlucky drivers yesterday, and there were a number that were unlucky, right at the top of the unlucky chart was Willem van der Vorm, who unfortunately right at the start of the race, his race was over, again through no fault of his own, and Willem will be hoping to right the wrongs of yesterday today, and the first step towards doing that is ensuring that he qualifies really well for the grid today. So the Coppa Shell drivers then making their way past our commentary studio, which is midway in the pit lane, so that you can hear those 488 Challenge Evos roaring past. And the cars making their way out onto the track. The Shell drivers then with the yellow strip across the top of the windscreen on their way to get their 20-minute session underway, of which 45 seconds has already gone. Stefano Pellin is racing team boss, and there you can see members of the Pellin Racing organization. Stefano was not amongst them, interesting. And there is Manuel Agostner, and this is von Skeltermar. Von Skeltermar, of course, podiumed yesterday. He'll be hoping to do the same today, and Manuel Agostner had a terrific race, to be honest, because she was able to take advantage of some of the unfortunate incidents that went on during the course of the race, but to take nothing away from Manuela, she moved up from a very lowly qualifying position, again through a small error, not of her making, but in terms of the car, and she ended up probably getting a result that she did not expect.
Well, that is a question I can't really answer, but it definitely, she improved very dramatically, and she might have felt that without the safety car interventions, maybe she could have done even more. On the other hand, there was a big gap between Axel Sarting and von Skeltermar and her at some point, which was negated by the first safety car. So it went kind of both ways for her. Anyway, she was very chipper with P3 and very happy following not a great qualifying. Thomas Goster, very much a different story within the family. He had a very good qualifying, was on P2, and that good qualifying result was nullified within the first 2 turns of the race, because he had it coming together with Willem van der Boom, and that damaged his car, and he nursed it back into the pit lane but didn't figure in the remainder of the race. So he is going for a redemption day, if you will. Replicating the qualifying result would be good. Doing it a little bit different in the race would be even better.
Yes, there is Peter Christensen in the 121 car going past the Thomas Goesler car right now. And very politically correctly, the Thomas Goesler race of yesterday was analysed there by Nico. Roger Grols, Peter Christensen, Christian Kinch, Alexander Nussbaumer, John Dillon, Thomas Goesler, von Skeltermar, Axel Sadigan, Willem van der Voort, Christian Herdwieper, Manuela Goesner, Eric Chung. They are your 12 Coppa Shell drivers. When it comes to the race this afternoon, they will of course be pitched in with the Coppa Shell AM drivers, although they are in 2 blocks, if you like. But it means that it becomes a 20-strong or 21-strong grid of cars when it comes to the race. And Manuela Goesner then on something of an installation lap. Her driver coach is Giorgio Sonagiotto, himself a very successful driver, and forms a potent partnership, if I can be so bold, with Manuela Goesner in more than one way. And the CDP MP Racing team, headed up by Massimo Pepe, who is a very lively character in the paddock. And there indeed is Giorgio. And he will, of course, be motivating Manuela. You can see the headset on, and they are in radio communication all the time. And it was really, really interesting when I had a conversation with Giorgio yesterday, because when Manuela's qualifying went awry through no fault of her own, it's Giorgio's job to pick her up and to rebuild that confidence and to say, look, you know, you can and will take something out of this race, even though your starting position is not where you would want it to be. The race is long, relatively, 30 minutes. Anything can happen, and probably does, and in yesterday's case it definitely did. And sure enough, so his motivation, and this is so true of the driver coaches and the role that they have with the drivers in terms of them being not only able to pass on their experience and their knowledge of tracks and knowledge of racecraft, but it's also the kind of emotional bond that they have with a driver as well, in terms of being able to get the best out of a driver. It's often talked about in single-seater racing, but it's just as prevalent here in Ferrari Challenge for a number of the drivers as well, I think.
Yeah, definitely. You kind of get the feeling for many drivers, the driver coach has to be kind of the mediator who gets the highs a little bit down and the lows back up, so they stay on a relatively even keel. It's a little bit of a different story with team managers. Think of the likes of Philip Barron, who will probably push the drivers and push the drivers and push the drivers. But you know, it's this environment where the drivers really benefit from all these inputs. It's the driver coach, it's the team manager, obviously it's all the engineers, and that is what makes this paddock very, very special, because by and large the drivers really experience and love and enjoy this input, and you know, it really, you can see with many drivers how it allows them to improve their racecraft.
Yeah, and von Skeltermar, who we're watching right now, he is being coached currently by David Fuminelli. But for many, many years, of course, he had the benefit of one Nicky Kadai, who has become sort of much more a management figure now. But he was coaching von Skeltermar as John Dillon goes quickest with a 1:39.060. Well done, John Dillon, the Grey Pool Nottingham driver. Here's Manuela Goesner on a hot lap as Alexander Nussbaumer now goes to the top with a 1:38.140. Now we are expecting a number of the drivers to have gone out on yesterday's rubber, and we can tell from just one of the screens that we have identifying what's going on in the pit lane that indeed Christian Kinch has gone out and done a couple of installation laps on old rubber and is having new rubber put on. But if John Dillon is performing the way he's performing on yesterday's tyres, then fair play, John, you're doing a good job. Alexander Nussbaumer, Thomas Goesner, John Dillon are the top three at the moment, with Manuela Goesner, Eric Chung. Then it's von Skeltermar, Willem van der Voort, Peter Christensen and Christian Kinch Yet to see times from the likes of Roger Grols, Axel Sartigan and Christian Herd-Vipper, who are three pretty quick drivers. And the clock continues to tick down on the session, which is only 20 minutes long. Manuela then with Sector 1, purple. Sector 2, purple, is Manuela on a new set of tyres. Is she on one of yesterday's set of tyres? We can't answer that question, to be honest with you, but Manuela is going very, very quickly on whatever rubber she's chosen or the team have chosen to put her on. And yeah, we can see. Now, perhaps we can find out the answer to that question, because Ludovica is with Giorgio Sonagiotto right now as Manuela Gostner does go to the top of the chart with a 1:37.998. Ludovica, Giorgio Sonagiotto, I was just bigging up. He's in conversation there with Massimo Pepe, and he will be, as we can see in the split screen, motivating Manuela right now. Ludovica, you're right in the heart of the action now.
Giorgio, we dive up into the action. Manuela took a pole in this moment. It's a good day for her.
It's only with the used tires. It's the warm-up laps for us. Now it's the right moment with the new tires. We hope it will be the right day to do something great in the quali. I think we have the pace, we have the performance, but as you know, it's always very difficult because we have only 2 laps with new tires.
And Giorgio, the last questions. Even if Thomas is a good start for you today, and in this moment he took the 3rd position.
As a team, we are there. We have a good setup, and we hope to stay in the first 3 positions with the 2 family guys of the team, and we will see.
Thank you so much.
Ciao.
Thank you, Ludovica, doing exactly what I wanted and ascertaining what tyres that Manuela was on, and she's put that 1:37.998 on old tyres. And as Giorgio was explaining there, they have calculated, Nico, that she will have 2 laps on the new rubber because she comes into the pit lane right now. That was, may I say, presentation team, pit lane reporting, working as one.
Indeed, and there is Thomas Gostner to continue the Gostner topic, and he is already getting the new Pirelli P0s, the new set, onto his Ferrari 488 Challenge Evo, and he will go out in but a few moments. So he's a little bit ahead of the daughter in terms of his tire change routine and progression. As we can see, most of the drivers are currently in the pit lane or are just on their out lap. And that means the pace of this qualifying session is coming to a little bit of a lull for a very, very short time. Before everybody gets back out, the track will be very busy. Traffic will be a big issue for the first few minutes, and times improving will be another one.
Axel Sardigan is on his way down the pit lane, I can see from our GPS map, and he will be on a new set of tyres now. And Axel's strategy will be to go out, install, do a hot lap, come back in a game. So Manuela Gostner is down there having a new set of tyres on. Ludovica is right alongside the car.
As you can see, guys, this is Manuela after took a pole. In this moment is on the pit after the pit stop and the change of the tires. So she is ready for continue this qualifying session.
Absolutely, thank you, Ludovica. She, of course, put that pole time in on old tyres, so we're expecting that 1:37.998 to be bettered. Alexander Nussbaumer, who has quietly been going about his business, and he's currently 2nd fastest. Then it is Thomas Gostner, and they are ahead of John Dillon, who showed some early promise, and we can see John Dillon on his way out of the pit lane now on a new set of rubber, and Von Skeltermaier is also there as well. Nico ascertained that the latter stages of this qualifying session will become very busy indeed because, of course, all the drivers have come in and they've put the new rubber on. I think that, personally speaking, Axel Sartigan, who is on an out lap now, he, as I say, the strategy will be, because when I spoke to Axel yesterday following the race, he said that he had the absolute measure of everything. He'd got tyre longevity. He was seesawing his times because he didn't need to push too hard. I think Axel will go out and he'll try and get a lap in very, very early on because it will give him life in the rubber for the race to come this afternoon. So we will see what Axel does. Will he be a one-lap wonder in terms of his qualifying It's Manuel Agostner on the top step at the moment of qualifying, but a lot will happen in the next 8.25 minutes.
Absolutely, and we can tell that every single car entered into this qualifying session is now out of the pit lane. So everybody's out there, everybody's either on the outlap or already trying to improve their time. So traffic now becoming a topic. 8 minutes remaining. Von Skeltema is who we accompany around this second sector, and he will come to the end of the second sector, and he is on a trajectory to take provisional pole position, 3/10 quicker than the current Manuel Agostner time at this junction. He's going through the stadium section. It's the triple right-hander, the last one of which he's now taking. Now it's 2 lefts to the finish line and a lot of throttle in between. You can see how aggressive he is with the track limits, attacks the curbs on the outside, on the inside, as much momentum as he dares take on the outside, and then it's to the finish line. It's a 1:37.532. That's near on 5/10 quicker. Von Skeltema P1. There you go.
Is he going to stay that way in the remaining 7 minutes? Roger Grohl says no, it jolly well isn't, because you can see the Kroijmans Race Art driver is on a very hot lap with 2 purple sectors. He's in the stadium section right now. He positions the car absolutely perfectly with a not exceeding the track limit for the drag race towards the start-finish line. Tries to shortcut the tarmac by going right to the inside, and he now takes very nearly 2/10 out of the previous best from Von Skeltema with a 1:37.336. It's Grohl's, it's Skeltema, it's Kinch, and you can't help but feel over the next 6.5 minutes those times are going to be a change in. Here comes Thomas Gostner. We saw him in the pit lane having new rubber put onto his car, so he will be hoping for a good one now. He's done his installation lap, and he is driving for everything now to try and improve the time that he set on the previous rubber, which gave him 8th on the grid. Thomas Gostner then, one of the CDP MP racing drivers, and you can see how they wrestle with the steering controls. The physical demands of driving a racing car are actually quite enormous, and perhaps something that we don't give enough credit to these guys for, because it's going to be warm come race time this afternoon, and the physical demands are going to be fairly great. So Thomas Gostner going for it, and let's split the screen so you can see Thomas Gostner hard at work inside the 488 Challenge Evo and see how that is developing in terms of where the car is on the track. He's done a personal best through Sector 1. This is looking reasonable for Thomas.
Yeah, 2/10 off the pole time through the first sector, but there is still lots of tire longevity available. There is still lots of grip available, and there is still lots of the lap available. So he's got 2 sectors to do something about that, potentially for pole position. We will see where he is after second sector. It's very close, almost on par with the Von Skeltema time. We're only talking about 7/100ths, actually less than that. So that stadium section, hypercritical now. Right-hander, that almost U-turn, and then he takes everything he can. All the power his power plant can afford to him. Every little centimeter he can get here with the track limits. The final turn, and then it's full throttle towards the finish line. 1:36.979. It's not quite there, but it's close. P4 for the time being. 4 minutes 37 seconds remaining.
I said that this will go right to the wire in terms of the times they are changing. Von Skeltema with a 1:36.979. Roger Grohl's with a 1:37.336. Von Skeltema, the only driver. Whoa! Did he have a moment there? Now, that time you can see through Sector 2, or we can see through our timing screen, he's got a track limits warning against Sector 2 for the time that he's on right now. But here we can see the Axel Sartingen car now. Axel Sartingen goes to the top with a 1:36.842. Taking a 10th and a 3rd out of Von Skeltema's time, exceeding the track limits a little there, Mr. Sartingen. But it matters not, because the lap time previously you set absolutely stands. And perhaps Axel Sartingen doing as I imagined he would, going out and shooting it as quickly as possible. Will he feel comfortable enough? Willem van der Vorm now goes P3. Manuel Gostner now goes P3, relegating Willem van der Vorm to P4. It's changing every single lap that gets completed right now, and also on a hot one is Alexander Nussbaumer. He's going to be one to watch. So Axel Sartingen currently is the fastest. But the 136 car that we're watching right now is Alexander Nussbaumer. Well done, guys, for picking this car up, because Sector 1 is purple. Is Sector 2 going to be purple? Yes, it is. So he's got very nearly 2 tenths up on every driver at the moment. For the Gomes Scuderia GT team, Alexander Nussbaumer really going for it in qualifying. So into the next turn he goes. Axel Sardigan has improved through Sector 2 as well. So can Alexander Nussbaumer give us a new provisional pole position? Well, he's got the final turn to do. Here comes Sardigan. He crosses the timing line right about now with a 1:36.615. Here's Nussbaumer, and a 1:36.9 means it's P2. But whilst we were watching that, Willem van der Vorm gives us a new pole time, Nico, with a 1:36.425. Where the heck do you point the camera?
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got Thomas Gostner on a big, quick one. And, you know, basically everybody, we're now in that stage where the tires are in absolutely peak condition to set that one or those 2 perfect final laps that you want to make count. Thomas Gostner, one of those who is on a trajectory to do something about it. Relegated to P7. And no, that second sector wasn't the one to write home about. Alexander Nussbaumer going again. Willem van der Vorm showing purple through Sector 1. So still very much in terms of improvements. Let's see who is maybe still in a position who needs to do something. Christian Hurt-Wieper at the very bottom of our timing screen. He's still very much out of position. And, you know, just to give you the idea of how tense it is, 1.4 seconds between the first and the last driver. So really, really competitive. One small mistake and you're 3 rows down come race time. Thomas Gostner, he improves to P5, had that second sector where he might feel like he has another thing to add. Manuela Gostner, meanwhile, very good first sector. So the Gostners are keeping us busy, as is Willem van der Vorm.
Willem van der Vorm, I said at the beginning of the program, wants to right the wrongs of yesterday. And he's doing that by putting in a blistering performance. So Willem van der Vorm, one to watch here. He's currently P1 with a 1:36.425. Manuela Gostner, arguably, I was going to say, out of position. You can see that now by Sector 1 being coloured purple, Sector 2 being coloured blue. That could be enough. We will see. She's 5 100ths down, but if she could make up 5 100ths in the final sector. So Manuela Gostner really going for it here. Willem van der Vorm also really, really going for it here, but he's got a track limits excursion through Sector 2. Thomas Gostner going for it now with a purple, and Manuela Gostner with a track limits as well, Nico. So that means that this lap is not necessarily going to count.
No, it is not going to count, but she's got one more opportunity at this. You can see Thomas Gostner completed the lap 6 tenths down, so it's going to be interesting. Axel Sartingen is having another go. Christian Hurt-Wieper is trying to improve, even though the second sector wasn't great. So we're still watching Alexander Nussbaumer. This is really, as you predicted, going down to the wire. We might see our pole time come with the clocks already at quadruple zeros, and that has come now. Finish. Checkered flag is out. Whoever crosses the timing line, that's it. Thomas Gostner, last chance saloon, no improvement there. And we built this up so nicely, but it doesn't look like anybody's now really, really on that flyer. We might still see improvements personally, but I rather fear that, or rather
by giving us what we think is going to be pole position, because we cannot see anyone that is going to take that time away from him now. So Axel Sardigan then has to settle for P2. Then it will be Alexander Nussbaumer, von Skeltermar, Thomas Gostner, Manuela Gostner, Eric Chung, Christian Kinch, Roger Grols, Peter Christensen, John Dillon, and Christian Herdwipper. Despite his best efforts right at the end of the session, he was not able to get there. Willem van der Vorm is going to be a happier man today than he was yesterday. He was in a brilliant frame of mind when we sliced down the side of his car in the car park this morning and had a conversation with him. And overnight, he's probably calmed himself from yesterday's anxiety, and he is in a really, really good position today. So well done. Brilliant qualifying from Willem van der Vorm. Axel Sardigan is going to have at least one to overtake. And there you can see inside the CDP MP Racing Garage then, and Giorgio Sanaggiotto, and just behind him his team principal Massimo Pepe. Nico was saying that, you know, there are team managers as well as driver coaches, and they all play their part in their driver's performance. Willem van der Vorm, 1:36.425. Then it's Axel Sardigan, P2. Then Alexander Nussbaumer, von Skeltermar, Thomas Gosner, Manuela Gosner, Eric Chung, Christian Kinch, Roger Grols. The top 9 drivers are marginalized by tenths only, Nico. Very, very competitive.
Yeah, look at the gap between P3 and P9. That's half a second, less than half a second actually, from row 2 to row 5. And it's really that close, and has been that close in Coppa Shell all season long thus far. So really, really going to be interesting. There is page 2 with John Dillon and Christian Herdweeper. I mean, 1.3 seconds is not a terrible qualifying, but in this case, it's P last. But that also means lots to do in the race. And we expect shaking and movement through the race. We also expect a Trofeo Pirelli qualifying in a few minutes' time.
Indeed so, as the cars make their way back into the garages, they're qualifying done and dusted. We have Trofeo Pirelli to come, as Nico quite rightly said. There you can see the car of Axel Sardigan. Then you can also see the blue and yellow car of Willem van der Vorm, who has given us pole position for Ferrari Challenge Coppa Shell drivers. The Sardigan car then into the scrutineering garage. You can see there the guy with the headphones on to the middle of the picture with the red jacket. That's Björn Grossman, who is acting as driver coach to Axel Sardigan this weekend. His normal driver coach, Daniele Diamato, former Ferrari Challenge champion, like Björn Grossman, is actually competing elsewhere this weekend, which is why Björn has been brought in. Being brought out of the car, though, is the Scuderia Monte Carlo driver, Willem van der Vorm. Congratulations, Willem. Well done indeed. A brilliant pole position where they won 36.425, being congratulated by the team, quite rightly. And well done, sir. We're thrilled for you. It's a point that he's put on the board, isn't it? And yes, come on, you need to be weighed. Vincenzo there, Crisaloni, saying, come on, you've got to be weighed, friend. And he's one of the technical delegates, isn't he? And good guy. And he ushers him off to the scales. And there he is. And just to make sure he's within the range that he should be. Of course, that will be the case. Up next, Trofeo Pirelli qualifying. Thank you so much for watching Coppa Shell qualifying from Nico and from myself at the moment. Thank you. Make sure you stay tuned, though, because Trofeo Pirelli follows shortly.
And before we go towards Trofeo Pirelli, we still wrap up Coppa Shell qualifying with Ludovica down in the pit lane and Willem van der Vorm.
Yes, we are with the poleman. Willem, congratulations for the results. For you, Misano is a very important weekend. You made a good qualification today.
Yeah, I'm happy. I mean, yesterday was obviously very frustrating because I was also on the front row, but I got hit in turn 2. So now I do one better, and let's hope today I can finish the race. I'll be very happy. It's an important beginning qualifying.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you later.
Well, see you later indeed, and we will see you later for the race. Willem van der Vorm, we are already seeing you once again in slow motion, because that is how his qualifying ended, with the checkered flag and with P1 on our timing screen. That means when we bring in the grid together between Coppa Shell and Coppa Shell AM later on, it will be spearheaded by this car. The 182 car of Willem van der Vorm of Ferrari Monte Carlo will be on pole position. And that means we have, as we can see, the car waiting to be scrutinized. And Willem van der Vorm gets his pole position sign from Elisa. Hard working for the Ferrari PR team, trying to Shep, her drivers, and everybody. We're about 8 minutes away from our Trofeo Pirelli qualifying. And that is going to come up in but a few minutes. For the time being, we will leave you, but we will be back in just a few minutes with more great Ferrari Challenge qualifying.